And finally, for these two problems, we're going to be using the standard algorithm method. So the first one that we're doing is 73 minus 48. So remember, for standard algorithm, we work from right to left. So the first thing we're looking at is our ones column. It's asking us to take 8 away from 3, which we can't do. So we're going to go ahead and steal from the tens column, being that 7 on the top. We're going to make that 7, which is really 76 or 60, so that we can apply that 10 to the ones column to make that 3 to 13. That way we can subtract 13 minus 8, which is 5. Then we're going to move to the left, being our tens column, and we're going to subtract 4 from 6 to get 2, or 20. So our final answer is 25. To demonstrate this visually, I'm using base 10 blocks. So I'm going to start by drawing that 73. So we're drawing 7 longs and 3 blocks to demonstrate that. This is going to be on the top part of our subtraction. Then I'm going to subtract the second part of our problem, being the 48. So I'm going to draw 4 longs and 8 blocks on the bottom. I'm making sure to keep my longs and blocks separate so that I can keep them aligned to know what I'm subtracting. Just to make sure I'm being clear, I drew this in the same way we set up the numbers, with the 73 on the top and the 48 on the bottom. The only difference is, instead of using numbers, I used visuals, being those base 10 blocks. So again, we're going to be working from right to left. So I'm noticing here that I don't have as many blocks as I need to take 8 away from the top. So I'm going to substitute one of the longs, being the 10, and I'm going to make it 10 individual blocks. So I'm stealing a long to create 10 blocks. That way I actually can take 8 away from the top number. Now I'm going to begin taking away those blocks. So one at a time, I'm highlighting one from the bottom and one from the top. This is what I'm doing to represent crossing them off. So since I'm taking 8 away, I'm going to cross off 8 from the bottom and 8 from the top. So as you can see, I'm on my 4th one, and I'm just going to keep working my way up until I do 8 on each number. So as we can see, this leaves me with 5 blocks left over on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those in the same colors that they're up there, just to represent moving them down to how many we have remaining. The next step I'm doing is the same thing in our tens place. So I'm highlighting one long at a time from the bottom and taking it away from the top. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and highlight one long from the top with one long from the bottom to represent how many we have remaining. So as we can see, I have 2 longs remaining in the top left part of that right there, since I did take away 4 from the bottom, being that 40, and I did steal 1 to make 10 blocks for the ones. So I'm drawing those at the bottom there to represent what we have remaining. When I combine these two images, or visuals I should say, there's 2 longs and 5 blocks. The 2 longs are equivalent to 20, and the 5 blocks are equivalent to 5. So altogether, our difference in subtracting these is 25. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to our second problem, with standard algorithm being 415 minus 239. So again, we're looking at the ones column here. We can't take 9 from 5. We could take 9 from 15, but for visual sake, I'm going to go ahead and steal from the tens column, making that 1 a 0 to create 15 in the ones column. Again, this isn't necessary, but I'm going to do it just so we can visualize that. So 15 minus 9 is 6. I then realized that I couldn't take 3 from 0, so I had to borrow from the hundreds place and change the 400 to 300 to be able to create 10 in the tens column. 10 minus 3 is 7, or in this case, it represents 70 since it's in the 10th column. And then we finally subtract our hundreds. So 300 minus 200 is 100. 3 minus 2 is 1. So it gives our final answer being 176. So this time around in drawing the base 10 blocks for it, I wanted to draw them from right to left just because we do work from right to left in standard algorithm. So I'm starting to draw our 415, but I'm working with the 5 in the ones place. So I drew those 5 blocks. Then I went ahead and drew one long for the 1 in our tens place, being representing the 10. And then finally I drew 4 flats to represent the 400 and 415. I drew this on the upper half, of course, since we are just, again, making sure to demonstrate this subtraction, but instead of numbers, we're using visuals. So now I'm going to go ahead and draw or represent subtracting 239. So again, I'm starting in the ones place, drawing 9 blocks for the 9 in the ones place. I'll then move on to drawing 3 longs, demonstrating the 3 in the tens place for 239. So the 3 longs will be representing 30. And then finally 2 flats to represent the 200 and 239. Now I'm recognizing that I can't take 9 from 5 here, so I'm going to go ahead and steal the 1 long from the tens place in the 415, and I'm going to replace it with 10 individual blocks so that I can take 9 away from the top. Again, we are now just taking away those 9 from the bottom, from the 239, and taking them away from the now created 15 and the top. So we're working in the ones value place and just crossing those off as we go. This leaves us with 6 blocks remaining, and unfortunately I didn't draw those down just now, but I do end up catching it later, and I'll explain when I do that further in the video. So now I am just realizing that I have no longs to take away on the top. I'm trying to take 3 from 0, and that's not going to work. So I'm going to end up stealing one of my flats, or 100, and turn that flat into 10 longs. So 10 groups of 10. It'll still be those 100, the value of 100, but it'll just be in split up longs rather than a flat. I then am going to take those 3 longs of the 30 from the 239, and I'm going to take 3 from the top, or 30 from the top, which is going to leave us with 70, or 7 in our tens value. So this is where I would normally bring down those 7 longs that I didn't shade, so the 7 remaining, and put them at the bottom. But I realized that I didn't do that for our ones place, which I mentioned earlier in the video. So here I'm just moving down the blocks that I didn't do previously, so the 6 in the ones column. And now I'm also going to move down those 7 longs that remain in the tens column. So now finally we're just subtracting our hundreds column. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight in pink from the bottom those 2 flats from the 239 originally, and one at a time. As I remove one from the bottom, I'm actually subtracting it from the top. So I'm going to shade one of those as well. And as you can see, I'm left with one flat that was not shaded. So that's our remaining value in the hundreds column. So I'm bringing that down now. And finally, I'm just totaling out what I'm left with. So I have 1 flat remaining, which is equal to 100. I have 7 longs remaining, which is equal to 70, and 6 blocks remaining, which is equal to 6. So altogether, I have 176 for my difference in the subtraction problem.